Welcome to our meeting tonight. Obviously, Zach is not here as chairperson, so I have the privilege and fun to moderate this meeting as vice chair. Another way of saying that is we have the B team here tonight. So anyway, I'm glad to be here and we will call this meeting to order. Um, Mr. Fay and I were talking beforehand, and he almost said this is going to be a short agenda, but I told him not to because every time we say that, it turns out to be longer. But we seem to have a very clear-cut agenda tonight. The first thing, obviously, on our agenda is the public comment session, and seeing nobody here, we will move past that. The approval of the minutes. So we've had a chance to look at those, and I need a motion to approve.
Make that motion.
Is second?
Second.
Okay, any comments, discussion, corrections to that? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. And I think that approved unanimously. And then we are down to vouchers. We've also had a chance to look at those. And before we enter into any discussion or comment, do I have a motion to approve the vouchers, both electric and water?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Okay, does anyone have any comments, questions, or want clarification on any of those? Okay, seeing none or hearing none, all in favor of approving the vouchers, say aye. Aye. And again, that is a unanimous decision, and that brings us to the approval of monthly reports for June. So, Mr. Fay, will you walk us through that?
I will open the door for Dudley, but I want to tell you that this is a year end now. This is June, the end of the fiscal year. Statements, we have significantly performed better in terms of the net income in both the electric, water, and sewer departments. As you can see, although our power revenue has declined, and we do a lot of this towards this pandemic, we were also corresponding with the lower power costs for that. So that's really helped us very well, and both departments are positioned very strongly financially. Dudley,
Sure, I'll be glad to add to that, but as Greg said, both departments, the electric department had, for the year end, was 642,000 ahead of the forecast. And as you see, the budget was 93% of the revenue and 90% of the power cost. Now, we have to go back to this because this was a big decision that the board made to sign the long-term partnership agreement with TVA. That for the fiscal year for September through June was $960,000. Had we not got that, that's where that 3% comes in.
Yeah.
Had we not got that, we would not be 600,000 ahead of the forecast. A lot of credit goes to the big guy sitting over there in the corner for fighting for that for so many years to get TVA to agree to a long-term partnership credit. For July, we've got 126,000. Of course, you won't see those statements until next month. But that is the big reason for the electric department being ahead. Otherwise, those pandemic numbers would have hurt us more in the electric department. Although our operation and maintenance expense was about 500,000 less than we had forecasted, and the electric department came out 642,000 ahead. Water and sewer department also did well, 170,000 ahead of the forecast, what we had anticipated. The sewer sales were impacted way more by the pandemic stuff because the industry, we have some big industries out here that use sewer that cut back, and that really hurt the sewer sales, what we had anticipated there. But still, both departments are in great shape. TVA's already checked the electric department numbers. Greg and I signed off on those today. They feel good about those. Our auditors are going to come in. Knock on wood, our numbers almost always match. In fact, they always match what the auditors get. So we feel good about that. That credit goes to my staff in the accounting department. We reconcile those numbers every month so that we provide you with accurate information every month. So, and that's all I got on the financial statements, unless there's any specific questions.
Any questions, comments? Okay, we do not need approval. This is just for information. Is that correct? Or we
No,
do
we'll
need-
approve, if that's all right, Mr.
Okay, we do need approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the monthly reports for June?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that approves unanimously.
That's a great job, by the way. I mean, given everything that's going on this last year and opportunity for distractions, I mean, y'all did a really, really good job.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on that? Okay, thank you. And I agree with what Steve said. That is wonderful effort and news. Thank you. Okay, now then, we go to the project status report. So will you give us an update, Mr. Fay, on that?
Yes, ma'am. If you should have on your board book and an opportunity to review for the electric department, we're tracking 2 work orders. I went through in detail last month on these, and I'll be glad to review that if anyone has a question about that. But I can tell you that they're both proceeding well, and we anticipate both of these projects to be completed satisfactorily, on time and on schedule and on budget, which is October of this year. But if you'd like any more information on that, instead of me just constantly repeating the same thing, I'm just going to pass on that unless you've got a question.
Any questions from anyone? Comments? Okay, we do need to approve the purchase order.
Yes, ma'am.
We need a motion for that approval. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
And second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that also approves unanimously, and we will go to the work orders next.
Yes, ma'am, I have a work order, 1183 in the electric department. This work order is a budgetary item. We budgeted $225,000 for this item, and when we ran the hard numbers out, we were pretty much right on at $217,000. What this is going to do is that we're constantly upgrading and replacing what we call veteran wire conductor that's been up for a long time. It gets loaded. And this is going to give us greater flexibility also in all that we do, because we put that through the filter of this Flizzer in order to allow us to do a better job switching. It's going to provide a feeder line between 25W and Spring Street, and that's going to be an important safety line when and if we have weather events. So we're excited about getting this project underway, and I recommend that the board approve work order number 1183.
Okay, we've heard the explanation. Do I hear a motion to approve work order 1183?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. And again, that's a unanimous vote. And that brings us to the review of the self-funded health benefit and wellness program. Mr. Fay, will you go over that for us?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is always a good time of the year for us when we talk about this, because we're always in such tremendously good shape, and this year is no different. We made some, because some of the Steves are new, I'll just go back just a little bit. We were, years ago in the early 80s, we were under the thumb of Blue Cross and Blue Shield in terms of fully funded insurance. And at that time, they wanted a 20-some% increase. And we felt like that was just way out of line. And that's when I really went to school on what premiums were and what administrative costs were, what reserve and buffer was, in order to try to understand them coming at us, because I didn't see it, and I asked for a lost run, which was something that we hadn't gotten in the past. And that's when I was able to see the claims as a terms to premiums, net out of the administrative costs for Blue Cross, giving them a decent reserve because we had a pretty significant reserve already built up. And I got them to agree, and I signed off that if they didn't raise the rates at all, we had no increase. If we exceeded the administrative cost and the premium, and the claims for that year, that we would make the difference up. That was that certain that we would be in great shape. Well, conversely, if we got less than, if our premiums exceeded the claims and administrative costs, they would refund us, which they agreed to, because they're coming at us with a 20% increase. They felt pretty good. They lost that bet, and at the end of the next year, we were $70-some thousand to the good. They wrote us a check. Now, I thought that was a great idea, and they wanted to raise our rates again, and I made the same deal with them. And year 2 went by, and we got another check, and that was for $60-some thousand. And then they didn't want to do that anymore, you see. So we were running about 100 employees, and at that time, and I don't know if it's any different, or if it's different, it's changed recently, they wouldn't self-insure any company that had less than 200 employees. But because of the unique circumstances that we had, they allowed that, and in that, I also wanted the reserve, because by then I knew what that was. So they self-funded us, and they refunded the reserve that they had for us. And that's when we started doing this. And then we recognized only actual cost for many, many, many years. And then maybe 10 years ago or something?
10 years ago.
About 10 years ago, we decided to fund on paper what it would cost us to fully insure, as opposed to this self-insure, to give us a better gauge of how we're doing, because we knew we were doing fabulous. And that's why these funds show these reserve numbers. These are not restricted funds. These are the difference between the cost of a fully funded program and the actual cost of claims and administrative cost and excess liability costs. All the costs associated with providing this benefit to our employees, as opposed to providing a fully funded benefit from Blue Cross, because they give us that number every year if we ever wanted to jump back on that ship, which I can't see us doing because this reserve continues to go up. So with that entrance, Dudley,
Not a whole lot left to say.
I'm sorry, but we are very proud of this.
Not a whole lot left to say, but we did convert to self-funded in September 1993. And like Greg said, we were just funding enough to break even at the end of the year, which was really low. We came out ahead every year, but we really couldn't show it. So we said, well, let's start depositing what a fully funded plan would be, and that way we can see that. Now, as Greg said, these dollars aren't restricted. We don't have to use them for that, but it gives you a good insight as to what this self-funded plan has done, as opposed to us just buying insurance from Blue Cross. And we started with 2.6 million, and we ended with 3.3 million. This chart here shows you our claims. Medical, for the year, the claims were $1,055,000. We had a little bit come back on the excess risk where somebody went over. We have $100,000 deductible currently. Every year they retool that to where I have to jack that up a little bit to keep the dollars, and we do an evaluation of what makes sense to add a little more premium or add a little more deductible. Because when we first started the plan, it was 35, but they tweak that number every year. So, and of course, there's logic behind that because the costs go up every year, so they naturally want us to insure more ourselves a little every year.
Which we don't have a problem with because that's all figured in that total cost of the program, and the fact that we have such a great reserve, we're much more comfortable with that, self-insuring that first 100,000.
Well, as soon as you move that target on that stop loss,
Yeah,
either if you move it up, you know you're gonna get hammered, and if you lower it, you know you're not gonna have anybody hit it. And that's my experience. And so,
We average 1 or 2 a year.
yeah, for that size, that's what I thought. So we'd have about 10 on
In
1,000.
your mind, you think that's gonna be the old people, but it's the premature babies that really nail you on that. Especially if you get twins or triplets, and that can, if you don't have that reinsurance, you're really hanging yourself out there. So you have to have it for those big cases. Our dental is running pretty flat. Our prescription drugs were the same as last year, but they are up. We have some people that are on some pretty expensive drugs, and I can't get into details on that, but we do. And for just cause reasons, a lot of them. Admin fees, they've held those pretty steady for us for those years. Excess risk, you can see, we've kept it flat, but we've tweaked that deductible $5,000-10,000 a year. And in the year end, we're less than we were last year. So it's a good year on the medical plan. I don't know how much COVID impacted that positively because all these elective surgeries couldn't be done, or negatively because everybody had to go get tested. I don't know, because we have to cover all that, as you know. So
we self-insured that dental too, and Phil Wink was big in helping us getting that done because we ran in the same closed door of you don't have enough employees to do, and he helped us with that.
And this chart here, this is just shows how our wellness program is going this year. It's been a difficult year with all the isolation and stuff, and we've been lucky that Covenant has been willing to come out and do these things on site for us. They just last few weeks have done this comprehensive blood draw, and you know that's $11,000, but that's money well spent to have every one of your employees, 115 employees, get that done. Because if we didn't do it here, probably 80% of them would not have that done, and that has cost some really big things for people in the past. That is money well spent, and that all this preventative stuff we do, the mammography screening, you know, that's the University of Tennessee brings the big bus out, and the ladies go have that done. They love that, having that convenience of having that done. It's still a great program. We've had to cut back on. We can't do the munch and learns because we can't all crowd in a room and do the education and stuff. But we're doing that online, giving people option to do that online. They may be doing like Mr. Clapp here on some of his training. But they're watching it and learning it, so.
It's like Zoom with a where you can mute it.
Let's move on, Dudley.
But that's a great program. It more than pays for itself. Our people appreciate it because they feel like we care about them. And that little workout center, we've had to space our treadmills out, you know, to get the distance and stuff. But they still use it. They love it. They're back there on break. You know, years before we had that, you'd go to the break room at 10 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's back there with their paper spread out and a honey bun and a Coca-Cola. Now, you go back there at 10 o'clock, nobody's in the break room. They're in the workout center, walking, drinking the water. So that's a great program that's helped their employees, and they appreciate that. They really do.
Doug, does this program pay for the COVID test?
The health insurance pays for COVID, yes.
Do you know what we pay for an individual test?
They can go anywhere they want and have that done, you know, and that just, it pays for it. And they say that price varies from what I've asked Blue Cross, it varies from a low price to a high price, but whatever it is, it's covered. You know, now you can go to the health department and get it free, but it's 10 days before you get a results problem, you know. We've had some workers that were out because they had to get tested, and they go to the health department and they can't come back till they get their test results back. So we're better off if they go and get one that's quicker.
Actually, just for your information, it's 2 days now at the health department.
Is it 2 days now?
Yeah,
Well, we're gonna have some people come in early then, aren't we?
Some phone calls.
just for
We
information.
had one go down there and it was like 7 days before we got to the house.
That's a recent change then.
That is like in the last week.
Yeah.
It's cut down to 2.
But that's all I've got unless you've got
Okay,
specific
well, that is
questions.
a great report. Any comments, questions? Okay, thank you. I think this was for information only.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
That brings us to other business. And if you will, Mr. Fay, share with us the information that you had during
Thank
this
you,
time.
thank you. We have had some great conversations with some of our local developers, very positive. We see a lot of positive things going on, and the interaction has been, I think, well received. And we're excited about many of the local projects going on. One in particular is the Aspire Park in South Clinton. We have met with Joe Hollingsworth and his team many times, and all of that has been very positive and productive. It's going to be extraordinary at the end of the day if all of that comes to fruition.
That building popped up almost
It
overnight.
did, it did, that steel, they can throw that in the ground. Our most recent meeting, this is one set of plans. I know it's in 3 binders, but it's one set of plans. And we've been working with them in electric and water. And I think we've done very well at some of the things there are no roadblocks, there are no potholes, there are no barriers so far. And one of the things that they asked us to participate in is how this interacts with our water tank over there. Now, if you look at this first slide, if Dudley can hit that thing, this is our existing tank. And I'll show you a better picture, but you can see the tank, the elevation, and the access road and the security fence around that tank. Now, you'll see this picture here. This is the actual tank. And I can't imagine why he would want to do anything to improve the aesthetic look of that, because it looks fantastic.
Pearl on it or something.
So, what they're suggesting is this access road is going to impede what Joe envisions as the flow of this park. And he's trying to do things that will better interact with how the layout of this park goes. And his question is, will we work with him on trying to do some rerouting of this access road and then other things? But the next slide, this slide shows what they're proposing, that he would build a road and the turnaround and the necessary space that we need when we have to do painting and things like that, where we have equipment and vehicles, and a new security fence. So this is the worst slide, but I wanted to give you an idea. The solid line is the existing access road up to the tank. The dotted line is what he envisions a way to get up to that tank, and you'll see it's more fronting 25W than the other way, the existing way.
Instead of coming in this way, they're coming in this way.
Right, exactly. When you're talking about they would be Cub, getting access up to our water tank. So the next slide shows, in addition to the access road and security fence, he envisions, although I don't know that this is 100% lock, but he envisions a structure, because that's at the highest vantage point of what he's calling an overlook. And the overlook, and he can see weddings up there, and he can see people coming up and walking up there, and looking out over Clinton, essentially. That's the direction that he is looking forward to going, and he wants our help, because we own that top of that mountain over there. I guess hill would be a better word. So, in addition to that, the next slide will show you that he wants to have it painted. And these are actual paint colors, and I think he wants it ribbed that way, which I personally don't have a problem with. And then at the very top, it's going to have a compass and the words "to it," because part of the theme of the Aspire Park is around to it. Get around to it. You may be familiar with that acronym, but I don't even know if it would be an acronym, but it's catchy. And I think when you fly over, and he thinks there'll be a lot of that, as they look down on the park, they'll see this round to it, So, where does Cub stand on this? And I can tell you where I stand on it. I think that the park is going to be a tremendous addition, not only to Clinton, but to our region, potentially, if it comes across the way that they envision it's going to come across. And I have, no problem with the access road, because I don't like the access road that we have now. It's not user-friendly, because, some of that you literally go straight up, where the way it's designed, the redesign will give us a lot easier to get up to, and more space to work our equipment, I don't have a problem with the security fence changing the look of that, as long as we have sufficient space between the tank and the fence in order to get equipment in to paint it and things like that. I don't have a problem with the paint, and I really, I'm still chewing on this round to it thing on the top of it, but it wouldn't, our citizens wouldn't see that. The issue then becomes the overlook. And the way I put it to Joe is, we want to work with him every way we can, as long as it doesn't increase any liability to Cub. Because there's an accident on this thing, I know you can sue anybody for anything, but I want it clear, that there's no liability there. Nor the way it's structurally put in, if it in any way for any period of time impedes anything we do. We've got a water line going up there and a water line coming down out of there, and we're going to have access to that all the time, And of course, he believes, and I believe, that all of this working together can get accomplished. He talked originally about buying the property. I told him that I would be more comfortable recommending the lease of the property. TVA has a lot of experience in this with industrial parks. They lease an industry property for 50 years. And that way, if for any reason things don't work out or fall through, that property obviously reverts back to the original owner, which would be us, you say. And I could get TVA to help us with the language on that and then run it by our attorneys. All done without exposure or cost to the ratepayer. And the safety factor, obviously, and everything would be important. So if we are going to be working partners in trying to make a reality of what that vision is for Aspire Park, that water tank becomes a real opportunity for cooperation and collaboration. By and large, I am up for the collaboration and the cooperation. The day-to-day stuff, because again, if you've ever worked with Joe and the Hollingsworth Corporation, you may find that they move at lightning speed. You know, we have to have this an understanding 3 days ago. What if the board, and I had an opportunity to share some with Zach, which he doesn't have reservations on with what I'm going to be asking you for. If the board is disposed to cooperation and collaboration on helping the foundation achieve the vision that we see, and I mean, I believe they're rolling with this full on. They've met with every tribal folks and TVA and the state and the city. They've overcome a lot, and I think they're full guns ahead. I would suggest that we cooperate and collaborate to the extent that we can, to where we're not an impediment to their vision. And if it's painting this and an access road, that's great. If in fact this overlook comes, if we can assure ourselves about liability and about practicality, you know, then I have no problem with that either. The further up the mountain he goes, the less cost prohibitive it is. And that's why he would like to get as close to us as he can get. And wherever that line comes in, whatever we would need to give him that protects us and still provides him with what he needs, then I'm for doing that. So if the board is of that mind, first steps that I would be asking for is the fact that we will engage with him, a positive aspect of the day-to-day, getting the access road laid out to our specs, getting the understanding of the paint, and I'm going to have them go in and inspect that and maybe get the state involved. I'm certainly going to get the state involved and get their opinion on the aspects of how close things could or should get to us, and maybe our consultants. And then in terms of cost, we're going to have to agree on who's paying for what, you know, and what's a fair and appropriate distribution. If there's a betterment to the water tank, the reservoir, because of what he's going to put, then he needs to understand there'll be an accommodation for that betterment in terms of the total cost of how things get done. So the allocation would have to get done appropriately. That's what I would ask you for, and then I will start, if you agree, to start exploring this overlook. To me, that's the biggest potential, because that's our property, and how that's going to work. I'm going to get with TVA and others. I will roll with that until I would come back as a recommendation on how to proceed on that. So the board will have the stop at that time, saying, here's what I recommend on this. Everything else, in terms of paint, unless you've got a problem with this with this layered painting, which I would suggest we may have there anyway if you saw the picture.
Any way to negotiate and change it to orange rather than green?
Well, see, no.
RT on top?
I like where you're going on that, because I thought we could leverage him, to get Cub or Clinton or something put on there. But this is gonna be an aerial thing, and I say, unless it's a showstopper for us, I don't think it's a bad thing. And this is all done to blend in with the color schemes and things. I don't have a problem with it, as long as we make sure that the paint is and this is high dollar stuff when you paint those water tanks. The color's we're not talking Barney purple here, and it's designed to enhance the landscape year round, those colors, I think earthy, greenish kind of thing going, great. But if the board would allow me, because I don't want to come back with every time we change a stake on an access road, do you see? Or is it going to be, sand, flat paint, or RBG 157 instead of 158? I don't know that you want to get in that level of detail. I don't even want to get into that level of detail. But if you say yes, go with this thing, and include us as showstopper on the legality of this overlook, and any other showstopper that you think that we should be aware of or have input over, then I would bring that back to you. I don't know what that is, but the main thing is the access road and the paint on this thing. And if you're good to go, then I'll work with him in a very constructive way to do that. What I'm trying to get is your approval to move forward on the day-to-day operational decisions that'll have to get made as we move forward on that. And then work towards what I'm going to recommend if in fact this overlook becomes a reality. And I think the likelihood is yes, but how best to position ourselves and Joe and the foundation going forward.
Do we have built into this somewhere that the upkeep on that paint is Joe's responsibility?
No, that's one of the things we haven't gotten down to. If there's a cost differential between different layers or colors or whatever it is, ongoing in the future, it shouldn't be Cub's ratepayers' responsibility to pay what's different than a straight one color beautiful blue that we have up there with what I consider architectural mold coming down on the side, But those are the things that we would want to iron out, Anytime everything's fine till you get to this, and this is what I always will get to.
You don't see many water tanks around that aren't rusted.
Yeah, that's true.
That's major maintenance to keep that up and paint it nicely.
Well, that's true. There's not many of ours that are rusted or for very long, because if you don't take care of that, they become pitted. But when we do these things, we do the inside too. We don't paint that, but you say you got to drain it and sandblast it, and any repairs you want to do. By and large, you don't want to be inside it. You don't want to stick your head in there.
Okay, so for clarification, before we vote on this,
I don't even know that you need to vote.
no vote?
No,
Just review?
because all I'm saying is, unless you've got a problem, my intention with the expectation that my board is in agreement, because I don't know specifically
You don't have a
clearly
recommendation.
defined
Okay.
what to recommend. I just want to move forward with the decisions that are going to come up day to day, and then I'll keep you all up to speed, and especially if there's something, if we hit a showstopper somewhere.
So you just want our nod to proceed
That's
with the
correct.
daily operational decisions until you come
Yes.
with a recommendation?
Because you know the direction that I'm going,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna try to accommodate what he is asking for.
Initially, this looks like a win-win for both parties, and, you know, just sitting back and looking at it, I think it would be an embarrassment to this board if we didn't cooperate in any way that we could, and this looks like a very easy way for us to cooperate with Joe in getting this park moving, so I'd be in favor of it.
Mr. Clapp, you want to weigh in
What
on
you're
it?
asking is well within the spirit of where we decided to go a couple of years ago with supporting the community.
Right, I think so.
Okay, so there's two nods?
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well. I think the only caveat that you might put in whatever the agreement is gonna be is that if any current or future regulatory body deems we can't do that, then it's kind of a no fault and everybody goes and walks away. Because you don't know where regulatory agencies are gonna go in the future.
Yes.
And so it's also the 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 40 years ago, and from now, if somebody goes, hey, I don't like that anymore, or there's some regulatory change. that
State
somebody-
law.
Well, or
State-
federal, or
yeah,
federal.
or
Somebody
federal.
strokes a pen and goes, hey, your fencing now needs to be 200 feet from your water tower because of
Right, right.
security issues. It's a no-fault issue. We don't have to negotiate it.
Right.
It's a regulatory change. So that's the only thing I can think of. When you were talking about liability, that's the only thing I can come up with. So.
I think that's great. I think that's a
But
great
I'm fine
point.
with it. I think it's a great idea. I think it'll make, again, Joe's doing a good thing out there. We need to be supportive as much as we can, so I think it's great, so.
Well, I agree with what all three Steves have said, and we know that Zach was on board, so there's your 5 nods.
Great,
So
well, thank you so much.
proceed.
And again, I can't tell you how positive that our meetings have been and productive, and we haven't hit a pothole at all, even on how we're gonna feed it electrically, or how we're gonna do water and sewer.
That's right, that's right. That's good. That is good to hear. Okay, did you have another item?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I did have one thing. Would you give us an update on COVID and CUB and how all the procedures are going?
Yes, first of all, financially, you know, we are weathering this. We obviously see impacts, but our customer base is doing well. We have a group that we're working with, and they're working very well. We were afraid of a real train wreck, and it hasn't been that way. I think our people have responded very professionally and appropriately. I mean, if you're out of work, you need some time, and they've got some time. So that's working really well. Internally, we've had now several cases of employees that have, either with their spouse or themselves, have contracted the virus. It's not been a great impact because of the layered procedures we've had, where we have staggered times where they come in. We've got fixed crews now. We've got as many working from home. We bought, 10, 12 laptops, or
More than that.
well, a whole bunch of laptops. And our IT people have done a tremendous job of now setting them a workstation at the house with the headgear and a phone. When that phone rings, it's like it's ringing on their desk. And our customers don't know the difference when they want to talk about extensions in time or sets or whatever their problem is. They're getting the same level and the same person. The only difference is the location is at the house. So that's why you see minimum folks out here in the lobby. If you went back into our CR area, that there's minimum folks there, because most of those, everybody that we can have at the house, we do. Then when we interact, we try to just interact in the field. Our field engineers, they meet out there. We try not to bring folks in. When we do, when we had this meeting and this was dropped off, we had tables set up in this room, and we had our chairs separated enough tables to give us 6 feet of space. We're doing our very best to be sensitive, and our people have responded really well. The minimum, I don't know, I haven't heard of any whining at all or complaining. They've really stepped up. So all of that's been very positive. There isn't one area of our operations that has been negatively impacted through this whole pandemic.
That's good. Well, I assumed that was the case, but I just wanted to hear from you, and I wanted the board to hear that things were moving along as well as they could under a pandemic, and thank you to what you all have put into place to make that happen.
Thank you.
Okay,
I got a couple quick questions.
okay, sure,
I'm just
sure.
gonna start on that anyway.
No, let's
right.
start with you.
When Ernie left, we had all met his replacement because he was in here a lot. When Dan left, I don't know that I've ever met the guy running the water department. Would it be appropriate to have him come to a meeting and just meet him and introduce him?
It would, yes. Here's my intention on that, what I intend to do. In time, as soon as we can get through this virus, I'm comfortable now with reintroducing the directors back into the boardroom. So I'll have our director of water and sewer in, and I'll have the director of engineering and operations in as part of my staff in the board, to where if a technical question comes up, they'll be better suited to give the most appropriate timely response.
The other thing, I know you have invested a lot in developing a relationship with Mr. Lash.
Yes.
Now that Mr. Trump has decided he's no more, is that gonna affect
No, he
us
is
at all?
more. He's,
Is he
yeah.
gonna, he's
Yeah.
not leaving?
No, yeah. You know, our president, apparently, his game plan is always come out strong and then back up a little bit. And what he wanted and what he got was the IT department. They tried to farm that out and let it, and there was a whole bunch of over 1,000 people, and they were going to farm that out. Well, that didn't sit well with the president at all, and he threatened everything and everybody, and they immediately, as soon as they could get to Washington, they submitted to whatever he wanted there, and promised to review, Mr. Lash's. He'll stay. I believe he's going to stay. I believe all of that was a dust up that got the box checked that the president wanted, and they're not laying off all of these people. And I talked to Jeff the other day. I mean, he emailed me and I emailed him back, and I told him that I would be available especially if there was an opportunity, that I would go to Washington myself and speak for the valley, which he very much appreciated, and I would be glad to do that. I would probably be staying with my son in Hartsville at the time, when that happened, and get a twofer going. But I feel that strongly. He has been a tremendous aid. This thing that Dudley talked about for years on this credit for this long-term contract. We had to hold the long-term contract because we didn't have three things. We didn't have flexibility to address the solar. We didn't have some type of protections if TVA was sold, and we didn't have the contract flexibility that we needed that would warrant a 20-year contract and still pay a premium because they had a horizon of only 5 years instead of 20, which means that they couldn't look out in the long term, so the assets had to be paid within this 5-year period, which our rates were unnecessarily inflated, and that's where the credit came in. And I worked, and especially, as you know, was chosen out of the 155 LPCs to represent them in negotiating with TVA on how to remedy those things. And 2 years, and I told TVA and PPA that I would no longer do that unless we had some positive action, because it was like pushing a rope. They would talk you to death and nothing would get done. And when Jeff came in, I met with the TVA board. I was invited over there and met with them in closed session on a Tuesday evening, and I unloaded on them. They're wanting the contract. I'm telling them why we're not going to sign the contract, and that if we could get these three things answered acceptably, that I would push for the membership to sign the contract. And when they hired Jeff, that was his mandate. And he called me within a week after he was hired, and we met several times, and then I met with some of his staff to work out, just what it was, and he talked to others too. And then, within 2.5 months, what we've been working on for 2 years, he was able to put together a contract that I was very comfortable with, which I spoke to the board about. I was the first one to sign that, and I went down to Knoxville to do it, and then encouraged all of the membership, and now out of the 155, really 154 because of the merger, I believe all but 12 of the LPCs have signed off on this thing. And that's what gives us our credit, which is 3%, because of this horizon, this 20-year horizon. You should be able to plan better, and therefore your costs will come down. And that's the benefit, which is why some utilities, the ones that haven't signed, give up. Their ratepayers do not get the benefit because they're paying at this higher rate. They're not getting this credit back, and I don't know how they can justify it. Millions of dollars. I don't know how they can justify it. But the ones that have signed it are getting the benefit because these folks are paying more.
Yep.
So Jeff's going to stay, and if he doesn't, then I'm going to make good friends with the next one coming in, and I might take that job myself,
We hope not.
No.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Gomes?
That's all.
Okay, Mr. Clapp, not anything? Mr. Long?
Good.
Okay. Mr. Fagan, you have anything you want to add to?
Good.
Okay, only thing I want to add is thank you for your emails. It feels good to be kept in the loop, and you always do a good job with that, and
Don't want you
Board knows.
blindsided if I can help it.
and we
Right.
appreciate that, so thank you. So thank you for your presence, your contribution, and the meeting is adjourned.